Parshas Bahar. Parshas Bahar. That we're going to learn. Okay, let's open it up. See where we're Parshas Bahar. We're on Chelik Aleph. Parshas Bahar. I sent to a few people. I sent copies, pictures. Okay, we're in this Sicha. We'll learn 20 minutes. Good. The Sicha of the Rebbe is that he asked the obvious question in this week's Parsha. It starts off that God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. And this is what he said. So what did God say on Mount Sinai? He said, all the laws. So no. This week's Torah portion says, God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, and what did he say? Work for 6 years on the land. In the 7th year, you should rest. That's it. And it gives all these details about the laws of the Shemitah. So everybody asks, hey, but all the laws were given on Mount Sinai. Well, what's going on over here? And even if you want to say that all the laws weren't given, right? I mean, the fact is they all were given, but I mean, there was a lot of laws that were given right before the Jews went into land of Israel, Ba'arvos Moab, it says, and that's the whole book of Devorim. And there were laws of Vayikra that were given from the Ohel Moed, Vayikra Hashem, the Ohel Moed, after the tabernacle was built. And there were a lot of laws that were given in the desert, the Midbar. But still, there were a lot of laws that were given on Mount Sinai. There's all the laws we have over in Mishpatim. Where's the Mishpatim? Over here, it seems that the only law that was given was Shemitah. That's certainly not true. So Rashi says, no, it's coming to tell you a general principle that just as Shemitah was given in a general law, you have to let the land rest. And all of a sudden it comes all the details. Don't plow, don't plant, don't work on your vine. So all of the laws of the Torah, even the ones that you might think were given from the Ohel Moed in Parshas, in the book of Vayikra, and that were given in the course of their wandering in the desert in Bamidbar, and the ones that we might think were given only on before they went into the land of Israel in the book of Devorim, all of these were also given on Mount Sinai in the details. Good, says the Rebbe, that's nice. But why did God pick this commandment of Shemitah to illustrate this fact? There are other commandments that are general and specific. Why specifically Shemitah? So the Rebbe says, okay, we're going to show why this law of Shemitah is the most general commandment of all of them. Even though on the face of things it certainly is not. It's an agricultural law. It's only done in the time when there's the Beis HaMikdash, right? And the only time done with the Beis HaMikdash. And it's only a law that's done, once every 7 years. It's not a law that's all the time. So the Rebbe says like this, what's the whole point of this Shemitah? The whole point of Shemitah is that 1 full year we detach ourselves from our source of life. People eat. That's why God created people. They have to eat. And if people don't eat, they don't live. Where does food come from? Contrary to public belief, food does not come from the grocery store. Food comes from the farmers. Where do the farmers get their food from? Well, it depends. If it's meat, they get it from cows and things like this. It says everything comes from the ground. Everything. Where do the cows eat? Everything comes from the ground, right? The fish and everything like that. Good, maybe fishes might be an exception. You can't eat fish all the time. I'm sure you could find out some way, but that also comes from the ground. But everything basically comes from the ground. All plants, all vegetation, and that's what all the animals live off of. Plants, vegetation, birds. So 1 year out of 7, 1 of 7 years, as all the farmers have to detach themselves totally from the ground. In other words, you have to rely totally on God for your income. Now, this is a very dangerous thing. It's not like Shabbat. Shabbat, 1 day out of 7 days, yet, it's a good thing. 1 day out of 7 days. There's a lot of opinions that say that non-Jews are not supposed to rest. They're not supposed to have a day of rest. I don't know. They'll have to go into it a little bit. I never did. Maybe if they rest because it enables them to work better, maybe it's permissible for them. But generally speaking, they're not supposed to rest. And for sure, they're not supposed to declare a day of rest. But still, a person he rests for 1 day out of the week. It doesn't hurt him so much. And like I say, that they discovered that it really helps. That was one of the things of Henry Ford. He discovered that a 6-day a week makes a better production. The workers are happier. They didn't used to be that way. They used to work 7 days a week. He discovered give them 1 day off with pay, and that they'll work better. You get more. Okay, but the 1 year not to work on the land, this is dangerous. This is already dangerous 1 year. If 1 year there's a famine for 1 year, you're in really bad shape. Right? The world is really bad shape. And that's what's coming to tell us. Once every 7 years, you have to remove yourself totally from the ground and say, our income, our livelihood comes from God. And really the other 6 days of the year, 6 years of the Shemitah, the other 6 years when we're working, really the only reason we're working is because God says we have to work. But really God could take care of the whole thing, the whole business himself. God just decided he doesn't want to. So if you decide you want to not work for 6 years, and then the 7th day in the year you'll rest, you won't work that year, it won't come out good. Because God wants you to work. But the point of the Shemitah is that God wants you to realize that everything is coming from him. That the whole earth comes from him. All the produce of the earth comes from him. Therefore, a Jew on the 7th year has to go away from the world. He has to let God take care of the world. Dalet. Shtei devarim elu, these two things. These two things, namely that a Jew is supposed to be in the world in order to fix it up. That's what God wants. And a Jew is supposed to be outside of the world. He's supposed to be attached to Hashem. These two opposites depend one on the other. 6 years you have to work because God wants you to work. Why does he want you to work? Not in order to feed yourself. That's also true. He could do that himself. God wants it. He did it in the desert. We saw the Jews wandered 40 years in the desert. They didn't work on the land. God fed them. God can feed us. Why does God want us to work for 6 days? In order to refine the world. Let's take that example. It's a good example. And the Jews were in the desert. God was giving them everything. Moses said, okay, fellows, we're going to go into the land of Israel. And everybody said, we don't want to. And Moshe said, here it is, the promised land. God has promised us the land is the land he promised to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, the land of our forefathers. We're going to go in. Everybody says, Moshe, you go, we're staying. Why? Why didn't they want to go? He said, because in the desert, it was beautiful. They were attached to God. God was giving them everything. They would never forget about God, not even one instant. They would go in the land of Israel, they would forget about God. So that's exactly what God wants. That there would be the potential of forgetting about him. That people would do all the work and they'd think that all the work comes from themselves. They would forget totally about the Creator. And they would be justified in doing so. Right? Like in the 6-day war, right? They won the 6-day war. And the Israeli government said, we did the whole thing. It was our pilots. So we didn't. Good, they had a point. It was the pilots. If there were no pilots, wouldn't have been able to do it. If you look closely, you see there were amazing miracles. Don't look too closely. It was, flukes. We were fighting. We're our backs to the wall. You can justify anything. And that's what the Jewish people were afraid of. They were afraid they're going to go into the land of Israel. They would start justifying everything and they would forget about God. So why did God want them to go into the land of Israel? He wanted them to go in because that's the whole purpose of the world. And that's the whole purpose of the Jewish people. To work in the world, to be in negative situations, to be in confusing situations, and to be in depressing situations, to be in disappointing situations, in scary situations, and difficult situations, and to overcome it. to think about God and think, what does God want me to do? And to do it, right? It's not very comfortable, but that's life. That's what God wants. So he says there, but in order to do this, you have to have 1 out of the 7 years, you have to just forget about the world and attach yourself to God. You have to refresh yourself. If you don't refresh yourself, then you really get sunk. But God says, I'm giving you 1 year. I'm going to show you who's the boss. Don't work on the land. It's going to be okay. And says the Rebbe, if so, there's 2 things, to be attached to God and to work in the world. These 2 things, they depend one on the other. In order to situate yourself above the world, and that's a level of Shabta or it's Shabbos Lashem. Let the earth remain rest for God. Haya hove v'yia ke'echad. What do you mean? The whole world is being run by God, who is past, present, and future at once. Shehu na'ale mishem Elokim. This is above the name Elokim, which is the gematria of nature. Yochel lavo. This can only come. Yochel lavo mitoch kach lahamaga im enyani olam ha'al pi Torah. Then you can, when you deal with the world, the world will be according to the Torah. And the other way around, by working with the world according to the Torah, is this gives you power to remove yourself from the world and be clinging to Hashem. V'zum mashmut perik echad. That's what one detail that we said before. Prat echad. Lefiv mahut sheshet yamim tizra sadecha. That's what it means. 6 years you should plant your field. That's what it means. Sadeshal tizra sadecha. You have to plant your field. Is that the field? Nishmarim, call in Yanim Lefia Shulchan Aruch. They have to be the field has to be done in the rest of the 6 years according to the laws of the Torah. Kilayim and in others not to plant things together and to take leket shicha peret. That's the preparation, working on the word, working on the ground 6 years according to the way God wants. This is the preparation for the 7th year. You'll be able to totally be connected to Hashem. And the explanation of the second detail is how can you have the possibility? So in other words, the 6 years prepares you for clinging to Hashem in the 7th year. And the other way around. How can you really work and purify the world on the 6th year? How can you do it? Only by means of that palm, that from time to time, once every 7 years, mitromema adam, a person has to elevate himself. The darga annihilate, to be completely removed from the world. Only then, harigam bebo shuv b'magam olam, when a person returns to be attached to the world, lozu bilavacha in nechsaf al yado. Not only is he not swept away by the world, but opposite, he makes the world itself kli, a vessel to God. So there has to be the 6th year depends on the 7th, and the 7th year depends on the 6th. Working on in the world the way you're supposed to in the 6th year, that gives you the ability to remove yourself in the 7th year, the power and the ability in the 7th year. On the other hand, the 7th year, that's what gives you the inspiration to work properly in the 6 years. Kedei, in order, liyos, badarga, yehuda, tatoa, lower unity. Kefia, derush, chayev, liyos. In order to do this, you have to be both from kalal, darga, shal yehudi, lower, the upper unity. Okay, the Chassidic explains is what's called the upper unity and the lower unity, which in a very short way, simple way means the lower unity means from our point of view, and the upper unity means from God's point of view. The lower unity means that there is a world, and we see the world, and the world is very diverse, but we're constantly reminding ourselves that really it's all oneness of God. God is creating everything, God is directing everything. We have to always remind ourselves that's what's called the lower unity. The upper unity is, from God's point of view, all there is God. That's all that there is. And the world is a big miracle. The world, that's the nothing that's not understood. Like they say that the Chassid said to the Misnagid, said, listen, the difference between us and the difference between you is that you're always thinking about God, and we Chassidim, we're always thinking about ourselves. So the Misnagid was very happy. You finally admitted the truth. He said, yeah, let me explain. He said, you are thinking about God all the time. Does God exist or doesn't God exist? Does God care or doesn't God care? Is God involved in the world? Is he not involved in the world? And word, right, by you, God is a big miracle. But the thing is obvious by you is that you exist. By us, we don't think about God. For sure, God exists all the time. Question is, do I exist? Am I really here? Is God really creating me? What's the reason Hashem is creating me for? What's the purpose I'm here in the world for? We're thinking about ourselves all the time. Right? There's no question whether God exists. The question is, how do I exist? So it's the same thing. That's what's called the lower unity. The lower unity is the lower unity is that for sure I exist. But Hashem creates everything. Hashem, thinking about Hashem. The upper unity is from Hashem's point of view. For sure Hashem exists. No doubt about it. Question, the amazing thing is, how do I exist? How am I here? In order, both of them depend on each one the other. Zeu prata beit. That's the second detail. Tizra sadecha, and that your seeding of your field, this is the goal. The whole purpose of the thing is not to be clinging to God on the 7th year. The goal is really the 6th year, how you do the 6 years. God wants us to be in the world. But that can only be if we cling to God 1 year. If so, but Surah Doma, we can also find the same thing about Shabbos in the 6 days of the week. Shabbos in the 6 days of the week, B'Sheshes Yom Yachol, in the 6 days of the week, Kayemas, that we do, Birurim, we work in the world. Shesh Yamim Ta'avod. On Shabbos, it's forbidden to do any purifications in the world. Shabbos, you're not supposed to deal with the world. You're not supposed to build, you're not supposed to make money, and then you make money, but you give charity. You're not supposed to do that. And therefore, it says on Shabbos, Hayachal Elokim. And it says, call the olamot, all of the helamot, all of the concealments. Vayachal means goes away. Elokim, all of the concealment, which is the name of Elokim, Kalim umeir sham Hashem, which is above nature. That's the thing of Shabbos. Shabbos is that there's no concealment of God. If we want it to be, it's available to us. These two things of Shabbos and the weekday, they depend one another. Like we learned before, you have to have 1 day of the week that's devoted totally to Hashem. And then on the other 6 days of the week, you can work properly. But the real purpose is the 6 days of the week working properly, making this world into a holy place. Vav. Ma'amito shel davar, and the fact, Yesh Yisrael, the Shemitah, that Shemitah in some way, the 7th year is better than Shabbat, the 7th day. Now remember, what is the question of the Rebbe? Why does God pick the commandment of Shemitah to demonstrate the fact that the whole Torah was given on Mount Sinai in its generalities and its details? Of all of the commandments that he could pick to illustrate this, why did he pick the commandment of Shemitah? So now the Rebbe is explaining. Shemitah has a tremendous advantage over even Shabbat. On one hand, it's the leaving the ground totally and being attached to Hashem, but its purpose is to work in the world 6 years. The same thing as Shabbat, but it's better. Why? In Shabbat, Asr Avodah Chol, because on Shabbat you can't do any mundane activities. Adam nimsa az, a person on Shabbat is found, b'darga shalamaylam ya'olam, he is above the world and totally removed from the world. Ein lo kol kesher elo. On Shabbat, a person can make a mistake and think Shabbat is separate and the world is separate. 1 day of the week, I'm going to attach myself to God, and that's it. When Shabbat finishes, I'm going back. When Shabbat finishes, then I'm going back to the world. The world, I have to be normal. But 1 day of the week, I'm a Jew. 1 day of the week, I'm totally Jewish. And that's what a Jew is. He's totally devoted to Hashem. And the rest of the days of the week, maybe there's a little bit of a raya, which is not the case on Shemitah. Although Shemitah, muteret shar ovdim d'chol. On the Shemitah year, you're totally devoted to Hashem, but only in agricultural things. only as far as the ground concerned. You can drive your car, you can call on the phone, you can do business. Ha'adam nimtza efo b'toch ha'olam, he's in the world. If so, Shemitah, this is really signifying the goal of Judaism. The Kol Zot, Shavta Oretz Shabbat Lashem. The whole earth is devoted to God. All your work on the earth is devoted to God. In other words, this is a year where it's a rest totally for God, but at the same time, you're allowed to work. The whole entire earth is to God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is above the world. Even though that the person is found in the world on the seventh year, you're allowed to do other things. You can do regular business. You can travel on a train and a plane. In other words, in the world itself, there's simultaneously going on two things. The Shemitah year, which means the whole earth rests for Yud Kei Vav Kei, for the essence of God. The essence of God is revealed everywhere in the land of Israel. And at the same time, you can do regular work. You can write, you can sew, you can do all the things that are forbidden on Shabbos, except for agricultural things. If so, the world is above the world and within the world at the same time. Davar zeh, dugma, this is what it says according to the Torah, Baal Shem Tov, Shavta Oretz. What does it mean, Shavta Oretz? There has to be rest, Shvita Vidbatlot Be'oretz, that this rest and this essence of God, Chaderet, it permeates the Shvita, this resting, this godliness, goes into everything in the physical world itself. Let's just do one more paragraph and that's it. Now we can understand why in Rashi it says Shabbos Lashem. What does Rashi say? It has to be, on the Shemitah, it has to be a resting day to God. Rashi says, for the name of God. What does Rashi come to explain to us? For the name of God. That's all he says. It says it has to be a resting to God. That's what the Torah says. Shabbat, the seventh year is a Shabbat LaHashem. And Rashi says, for the name of God. Kashem Shneimar, just like it says on Shabbos Bereshis, just like it says on regular Shabbat, that it's for the name of God. L'chaora ma mosif kan. What is Rashi coming and telling us? El lafisha muzba, what we said before, now we can understand. Kevan said Shemitah, since that in the Shemitah it's permissible to do mundane things, right? You can work with money, you can write, you can build, you can do all these things. Yesh la'adam, a person has a connection with the world. Alul mishu lachshov, a person might think that it's forbidden to plow and plant in the Shemitah. This is not to God, which is above world. Shemitah is just an agricultural thing. Let the land rest. It's practical. Ki im inyan shel avodas habirurim. This is much something like the Shemitah year is something like Sheish Shanim Tizra Shel Birur B'toch Ha'olam V'lo L'mayla Mi'olam. You might think that the Shemitah year is something that's relevant to nature. It's it's like a nice thing to do, but it has no real connection to being the essence of God. Essence of God, that Shabbat, you're totally removed from the world, like before the world was created. That's what Shabbat is. And with the Shemitah, you're still in the world. So a person might think Shemitah is not so high. Maktim, therefore Rashi says, no, that the whole year of the Shemitah year has to be L'Shem Hashem, just like it says by Shabbos. Hari Lefanenu Shvita Sa'oris Shemimenu Tetzei Lechem, that letting the earth rest, from the earth comes all of our livelihood, bread, which is the main life of a person. Through a person could eat fish. You could eat fish, I guess, so the whole thing. Im kain, if so, harizeh to'eles v'his pashtus min olam. If so, a person in the Shemitah year is really removed from the world, just like he is on Shabbat. But the fact that it's permissible, all the other things of chol, this is only shows how high it is. Sharov dim dechol eno el yitron. The fact that you can be in this level of Shabbat for one full year, and you can still work in the physical world, just not on the land. The land is just a sign what type of revelation there is of godliness, and you can still work in the world. You can put godliness, this level of godliness, into everything else in the world. Shechen betocha uvdim dechol, that within mundane things themselves, muchdar, can be permeated the light of Hashem, which is above all of the worlds totally. This is the big novelty of Shemitah, as we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. Chapter Ches. We'll continue, God willing, tomorrow.